Good evening. So, we are here once again this Wednesday at 7 p.m. to continue our series in Bible study. Today's topic is the Temple of Jerusalem. But first, a few questions. How many temples are we talking about? The temple that Solomon built, or the temple that Herod built? And how many of them were destroyed? And if you look at the temples that are destroyed, then today, how many temples have survived? How many temples are there today in Jerusalem and all over the world? Well, we're going to look at these questions in great detail. I also need to tell you the roadmap for the next few weeks. Next week, we're going to learn the secrets of interpreting the Bible. I will tell you a simple secret whenever I've been stuck with some interpretation. I have a wonderful tool to understand the exact meaning of what the author of the Bible meant when he wrote what he wrote, whether it is in Hebrew in the Old Testament or in Greek in the New Testament. Then the week after that, we will learn about the many Herods. There's Herod the Great, Herod Antipas. There were so many Herods. We'll learn all about this family, this Idumean family. And we'll learn about the different taxes that the Jews had to pay. They were burdened by taxes. Taxes from the Romans and from the temple authorities. And they had to pay a tax for even sinning, and all being sinners. The week after that, we will possibly look into the Islamic question, the question of Islam. We will look at it very, very analytically and objectively. A lot of people have asked me this question, and I think it needs answering. And after these 3 weeks are done, the following 3 weeks are done, we will start with the Gospel of Matthew. It'll be a lot of fun, believe me. Doing the Gospels has always been fun because we are looking closely at the life of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So, having laid bare the roadmap for the next following weeks, the Gospel of Matthew will take many, many weeks. It'll take a lot of Wednesdays, and we shall do about approximately one chapter a day, and we will do it in great detail. So stay with us on this wonderful journey that we are going to have. So let's come to our topic, the temples of Jerusalem. So before we come to the temples, let's look at the origins of the temple. We all know that when Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt, he rose to become the ruler of Egypt. The Pharaoh bestowed on him many favors because of his wisdom. And when there was a famine in Israel, his brothers and all landed up there, and you know the rest is history. And they stayed on, all of them stayed on in Egypt, and they finally were led into slavery. And then was born Moses to be their leader. You know what happened on the day of the Passover, the original Passover. He led them out of Egypt. And as they were being chased by the Pharaoh's men and charioteers, they crossed the Red Sea. And you know, Moses parted the Red Sea. And they all escaped into the desert, into the wilderness, in their onward journey to the Promised Land. And as they stepped into the wilderness, Moses was tending to a flock of more than 100,000 people of his own. They had to be fed, they had to be nurtured, they had to be motivated to continue the journey. And there were so many challenges facing this great community as it was trying to walk through the wilderness into the Promised Land. And along the way, they realized Their hardships were aplenty, and they started cursing Moses. They said Egypt was much better than this wilderness. Of course, God punished them many, many times. Then Moses finally went up Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is also called Mount Horeb. He went up the mountain, meditated. God spoke to him, and as I said last week, with his own finger he wrote into the tablets the 10 Commandments, so that the people would honor it and keep it. For therein would come some semblance of humanity amongst the Israelites. He was a long time up there, and as he came down, because he was a long time missing, the Israelites got restless. And there in the desert, wishing for one thing that they'd love to eat the most, the meat of a calf, and having a lot of a very, very precious thing, which was gold. They made a golden calf. They wanted to see their God. They were wondering, how can we love a God whom we cannot see? So they made this idol of gold, the golden calf, and started worshipping this because they wanted to see God. As Moses was coming down from Mount Horeb, along with the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments, he was aghast, and so angered was he that he broke those tablets and completely destroyed the golden calf. He was angry. Then he went back up, and God gave him a replacement. This time the people of Israel had realized, but God was going to punish them. They would not see the face of God for another 1,500 years. They would not see, till the Word was made flesh and dwelt amongst us. Lord Jesus Christ came as an incarnation of God, the Son of God. And it was only then that their Messiah had come in front of them, but they did not recognize him. But now coming back to the 10 Commandments which Moses had in the 2 tablets in his hand. When God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, he had to keep the tablet somewhere, for it was holy. God directed him and the people. So the idea of a temple germinated. They made something called the Ark of the Covenant, a box. It was 2.5 cubits in length, 1.5 in breadth, and 1.5 in height. 2.5 cubits is 45 inches. 1.5 in breadth cubits, that is, it's 27 inches in breadth and 27 inches in height. It was plated entirely with gold, the inside and the outside. 4 rings of gold were attached to its 4 feet, 2 on each side. And through these rings, 2 staves for carrying the ark were inserted. And these were not to be removed, because everybody was prohibited from even touching the ark. So all they could touch were the staves, those long sticks, as you can see it in the diagram. The 2 tablets containing the 10 Commandments were stored in the Ark of the Covenant, and they were carried on the shoulders of the Israelites as they walked along in the wilderness, in the desert. They covered the Ark of the Covenant in a veil when they wandered in the desert, and a cloud hovered over it. It was the presence of God. They also made a tabernacle of meeting where Moses could go and meet and listen to God. It was a holy place. Wherever they walked, the cloud kept on following them over the tabernacle or over the Ark of the Covenant. And so they went on, and they reached the promised land. David always wanted to build a temple for God, for that Ark of the Covenant. But God ordained otherwise. He would have to wait, for his son would build the temple for the Ark of the Covenant. The legend of Solomon's wisdom had spread far and wide. He took upon himself to build the temple, and for that he started charging the people tax. He needed the money to build a temple. He built a grand temple on Mount Zion, and he built a magnificent temple, as you can see it in the slide. It was so grand and it was so beautiful that people came to worship there with a lot of reverence, because it also had the holy place and the Holy of Holies in which the Ark of the Covenant was kept. And then you know that what happened when Solomon died, his son Rehoboam became king. And as he became king, he continued demanding taxes from the people. They were unhappy. Normally, the Benjaminites and sons of Judah, they were the ones who inhabited Jerusalem and that territory. The rest of the tribes were very, very angry, and they fought and separated themselves from these two tribes. And the 10 tribes moved on. They said, we don't want one kingdom. Our Samaria and Galilee will form another kingdom called the Northern Kingdom. So we had two kingdoms, Southern and Northern. Because they were divided, the Assyrians, who are north of Israel, the Syrians, that is, we call them today, the Assyrians attacked the Northern Kingdom and conquered them in 727 BC. And then for another 150 years, the Southern Kingdom survived with the temple till Nebuchadnezzar II from Babylon, that is current day Iraq, came with his armies and conquered the Assyrians. He did not stop his march. He marched on beyond Galilee and Samaria and came into Judea and came to Jerusalem because he had heard about the temple. And he completely destroyed Solomon's temple. And he took over the whole of Judea and Jerusalem and Samaria and Galilee. And to ensure that these Jews would not revolt against him in future, he took all the able-bodied and the intellectual people and he exiled them into his own country of Babylon. And he put people from Syria and the other places here. So you know what happened in Babylon in the exile. You can read it from the books of Daniel. They were in great hardship in Babylon. They could not worship their God because the Babylonians worshipped their own God. And they wanted all the Jews to worship their God. And then came the Persians. The Persians attacked the Babylonians and conquered them. Cyrus the great Persian king, was so noble of heart. He saw that the Jews were so despondent and so depressed. He saw that the Jews were an intelligent tribe, God-fearing. So he allowed them, under the leadership of Nehemiah and the prophet Ezra, to go back to Jerusalem so that they could build the temple again and they could settle back in Jerusalem. I told you this story last time. So they started to try to build a temple, but it was just a makeshift temple, some sort of maybe a tin pot structure or whatever. And the years passed on, and you'd heard about what happened. You heard about Antiochus Epiphanes, how he came into the temple and put the image of Zeus, and he also sacrificed some pigs there. That is what we call the abomination of desolation in the temple. The Jews were enraged and they fought back. You know what happened. But that kingdom of Judah Maccabeus did not last long. In 63 years before Christ, the Romans took over the whole of Judea and they appointed Herod as king, as a local king, to collect the taxes and to give it to the Romans. The Romans didn't want any trouble in any of their provinces. So he asked Herod. Herod was a very shrewd man. His father was a recent convert to Judaism. The Idumeans had just converted. They were not hardcore Jews. They didn't have the hardcore fanatic beliefs of the Jews. So Herod thought that, let me at least, to possibly endear myself to the Jews, let me build the temple. Build a proper temple. So what he did was, he looked at the Mount Moriah, that's Mount Zion. We call it the Temple Mount. He looked at it and he said, We have nearly 500,000 people or sometimes 1,000,000 people coming here during the Passover, because it is a rule for all Jews to visit Jerusalem during the Passover. And this Temple Mount is too small. You can see it in the diagram here. Yeah, the Temple Mount was very small, and on top of that was this small temple. So what he did was, along the edge of the Mount Zion, he built walls around the mountain, as you can see it here in the diagram. And then he filled it up with landfill. He filled it up, and now the area that was a few thousand square feet, a few square meters, sorry, he extended it into a huge platform with huge stones, and he filled it up so that he had a very, very big flat sort of plateau of 35 acres on which to build a grand temple. He built a grand temple, one of the wonders of the world at that time. This is how the second temple of Jerusalem looked after it was built, quite in contrast to that small little temple that they had. Herod knew that his name would go down into history. He spent all the money he had and he was collecting. He gilded the temple with gold. And this temple would have had to be a place of sacrifice. So he built an altar that was 90 feet high and 90 feet wide, with 3 courses of well-polished stones and one of timber. And this altar had a cavity that led into a culvert that ran into the valley of Kidron, the Kidron Valley, which is on the east side of the temple. Its grandeur was so immense, its beauty could be seen glimmering in the sun from miles away. Let us look at the temple. You see, the golden gate that you see is in the east, and the western wall you see is on the west, as you can see it. You can see that the entrance, all the doors to the entrance of the temple, right up to the Holy of Holies, all these doors are facing east. That was the way it was. He built this temple so beautifully. It was worth going just to visit, but everybody was not allowed in the temple. The temple precincts was divided into 4 courts. First was the court of the Gentiles. The Gentiles are people like us, all other people who are not Jews. Then there was the court of the women, the court of the Israelites, and the court of the priests. Let's have a look at it. Can you see the shaded portion? It is called the court of the Gentiles. You can see a major portion of the temple land was reserved for everybody. That is, the Gentiles could roam around there. They could go wherever they wanted to go as in the shaded area. But if they tried to cross the boundary, you see the shaded boundary there? If they tried to cross that and entered into that inner territory, they would be executed. There were warning signs put all around the place, warning the Gentiles not to enter the sacred territory, for Gentiles were considered unclean. You see the court of the Gentiles, I'll show it to you. You see the colonnades, you see the pillars, they were so beautiful. You can see the court of the Gentiles, huge, both sides of the temple precinct. It was into these outer courts that Jesus came and drove out the money changers who had been accumulating wealth by using the temple as a place of merchandise. I'll tell you more about it. But let's go further into the temple. You see the shaded area that's a little brown in color, ochre colored. That's the place where the Gentiles couldn't visit. Then you see the women. The women could go anywhere they want, except, you see another place where the staircase, the rounded staircase is there. That's the court of women. The women could go there. They could go around the temple, but they could not visit the blue shaded areas. In this court at the west end was the treasury. You can see the treasury. It's a small rectangular thing. I'm showing you. There was the treasury, and those steps, those rounded steps, are known as the Nicanor gate. Jesus was actually sitting on those steps along with his disciples when he saw everybody putting their money into the treasury for the temple, offerings into the temple treasury. And he noticed this old woman, this widow. And he said, assuredly I say to you that this poor widow has put in more than all those who have given to the treasury. For they all put in out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had, her whole livelihood. Can you see the court of Israel? This was the court where men were allowed. Men could go up to there, because they had to go there with their lambs and whatever their offerings, So they were allowed up to that point. And now this small blue shaded area was the court of priests. Only the priests could enter that area. Now you see 3 rectangular blocks there. I will explain what they are. You can see the Holy of Holies right at the end of the temple on the western side. The Holy of Holies. Now in this temple of Herod, remember when Solomon's temple was destroyed, the Babylonians had also destroyed the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant had been lost. So in Solomon's temple, the Ark of the Covenant was in the Holy of Holies. But now in Herod's temple, the Holy of Holies was totally empty. The place where the Ark of the Covenant had been placed was raised. There was something constructed, It was raised. The place was raised to show that here was the Ark of the Covenant. You can see that the Holy of Holies was blocked by a veil. It was a thick curtain, so thick that it would not sway in the wind. Nobody could see inside. Of course, the Holy of Holies was very dark. Next was the holy place. The holy place had the altar of incense where the priest would go and light up incense. The court of priests was reserved for the priests, as I said, and there was the altar of sacrifice. The altar of sacrifice was so huge, and I told you, about 2.5 million people on Passover, 250,000 lambs were slain. There were rivers of blood that flowed and into Kidron Valley. That was how it was. And the meat was given to the people for their Passover meal. Then I have already told you about the court of Israel. Can you see the Nicanor gate that I have already told you about? And there is the treasury. Yeah? The gate through which you entered the temple was called Gate Beautiful. The gate through which you entered the temple precinct was called Golden Gate. You can also see that in the court of the Gentiles, which was a huge place, the Gentiles used to sell animals for sacrifice. I've already told you that the Israelites were told by the priests that whenever you commit a sin, you have to sacrifice a lamb. Now a lamb was very, very expensive because you couldn't buy the lamb from the common marketplace. You had to buy it only from the temple because you had temple inspectors that checked. In the market, you could easily bargain and get a blemished lamb, who was possibly lame or whatever. So you had to buy the lamb in the temple. So when you had to buy the lamb in the temple, you needed money. Now you must remember, people from all over the place, from Africa, from Europe, from everywhere, from the islands of Cyprus and Crete, everywhere, they used to come on the Passover, during the Passover. So when they used to come, they used to get their own money. The temple people would not accept this money, and they would not accept the Roman currency because it had the graven image of Caesar. So they had money changers who actually accepted the foreign money and changed it with Tyrian money, the money that was minted in Tyre. Tyre was a local place north of Israel. So they had required money changers. The money changers would charge about 4 to 8% for changing the money into this local currency. When they would come out, they had to again change the money. So imagine such a lot of money was being lost. The money changers were making money. Now we come to the lamb. The lamb was so expensive. What would the poor people do? So in the book of Leviticus, chapter 5, verse 7, God had made a provision for the poor. It is written there, but if you cannot afford a sheep or a lamb, you shall bring to the Lord as your penalty for the sin that you have committed 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. So the poor people had an option. But even these doves were sold at 12 times the price because you could not buy them from the market. You had to buy them in the temple. Now, when they used to try to buy these turtle doves from the animal sellers in the temple, normally it happens in society when people are, when rich people go to a shop, they are given all the respect and everything. But when poor people go to the same shop, they are shooed, they are not treated well. So it was with these poor people who would go to the temple and try to buy the pigeons. They were treated very badly, they were looted. The money changers also treated them badly because it was just very less money, you see. So they were being treated very badly. So you can imagine why Jesus was angry. He was angry because the place of worship, they had turned it into a den of robbers. They were looting everybody in the name of God. So in the beginning of his ministry, as I said in the book of John, he drove out all the money changers and all the animal sacrifice sellers. Imagine during the Passover, such a lot of business was being done and he drove them out. Even if he had driven them out and they stayed out for 4 hours, you imagine the amount of revenue lost. So the high priest was very angry with Jesus. He wanted to take revenge. And so it was 3 years later when he came back to the temple and he drove them again. They were extremely angry and they wanted to kill him, and they succeeded. Now let's explore the rest of the temple. Herod's temple, as you can see in the illustration, you can see the court of the Gentiles, you can see the court of Israel, you can see the whole thing in this overview map, but I shall take you on a tour. You see the court of Israelites. It had these columns, pillars. They were huge, absolutely huge. And the court of Israel was the place where most of these Jews would go and they would collect. It was a place for gathering. And there was another place. It was a famous place. It has been mentioned in the Gospels many times, also in the book of Acts. It was Solomon's porticos. It was on the eastern side as you entered the Golden Gate. There were these colonnades sheltered from the sun. It looked beautiful, as you can see here. The outer courts were enclosed by magnificent colonnades. It was here that Jesus was seen walking during the Feast of Dedication. That is Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the feast when Judah Maccabeus drove out the Syrians from the temple. And Jesus was walking there during the Feast of Dedication and was teaching the multitudes. And before long, it also became a customary place for the early church. If you read the book of Acts, chapter 3, that lame man who was healed by Peter and John, he was healed here, and he started jumping around, and here in this place, in Solomon's porticos. Attraction of the temple was the royal portico on the south side. It was so beautiful, it was double-storied, and you can see here how wonderful it looked. It was the most magnificent part of the temple. It was called the royal porch of Herod on the south side, where Jesus at the age of 12, if you remember, when he was lost, he sat among the doctors of the law and he was discussing the law with them at this exact place. It's written in Luke chapter 2 verse 46. Now, you also know Nicanor gate. I already told you the rounded steps where Jesus was sitting. You can see that. There were 8 gates leading into the temple. There were 2 Huldah gates or mole gates from the south. The south is where the royal porch is, where I showed you. And it was looking like this. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. You can see there were so many temple gates. You can see Gate Beautiful. You can see the Golden Gate. Can you see Mount of Olives? Mount of Olives was east of the temple. And if you stood on the Mount of Olives, you could look right through the doors into the temple, into the holy place. You could see it from there. Can you see Jesus here with his disciples standing in the Mount of Olives, and they can see the temple, and they are standing to the east of the temple, and the sun is setting in the west. You can see this. There was another place in the temple. It was called Herod's Palace Fortress, and it was named after Antonia, after his friend Mark Antony. Herod was a great friend of Mark Antony. You must remember Mark Antony, who married Cleopatra. Yeah. Along the northern side of the temple courtyard on a high hill stood the massive palace, the fortress of Antonia, another of Herod's landmarks. It looked beautiful. You know why it was good? It was very strategically placed. The Roman soldiers could see what was happening in the temple. They could not enter the main temple precinct, but they could easily enter the court of Gentiles. Can you see this? A stairway and an underground passageway connected the Antonia with the court of Gentiles. And 600 soldiers stationed there were always on the alert for disturbances within the temple compound. It looks like a subway, doesn't it? No wonder the soldiers could come running. They didn't have to go down and cross the Kidron Valley and run up the steps and all that. Just through an underground tunnel they would come and they would restore order in the temple area. You know, it also happened in the book of Acts in chapter 21, verse 27 to 32, you can read. When they caught Paul and they wanted to kill him, they had planned to kill him. And they said that this is the man who teaches against the people and the law in this place. They also blamed him for bringing Trophimus, who was an Ephesian. They said he's a Greek and he has been brought into the temple. And they seized him and they were going to kill him. When news came to the commander of the garrison, he immediately took soldiers and centurions and ran down to them through the same subway. And when they saw the commander and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. Of course, they killed Jesus in AD 33. And they carried on. The Sadducees, the high priests carried on. But something happened in AD 66. The Jews are always fanatical. Now you also know that the governor stayed in Caesarea. Last week I told you. A group of Greek people, they made maybe a windfall in their business. And they wanted to offer sacrifices to their god. So they burned some birds as sacrifices to their god. Opposite a synagogue, which was in Caesarea. The Jews were so angry because of this, and they thought that the Greeks were trying to rile them, and there was a riot. The Roman governor tried to quell the riot. The Jews thought that he was taking sides with the Greek and with the Hellenists who wanted to bring their Greek gods into Judea. And so there was a big riot, and the Jews in Jerusalem also rose up, and all over Palestine, in Galilee and everywhere, they rose up in revolt against the Romans. And they even killed a lot of Roman soldiers. This went on for 4 years. In AD 70, Titus, who was the son of Vespasian, who was Caesar in Rome, he was an astute general. He thought, let me solve this problem once and for all. He knew that if he had to solve the problem, he had to choose the correct time. The time when Jerusalem was at its most vulnerable, and that was just during the Passover. 3 days before the Passover, on April 14th, AD 70, Titus came with his army and besieged the walls of Jerusalem. His soldiers had surrounded the temple and they built walls around the temple. Now you know that Jerusalem has no river. They have no water. They only rely on underground aquifers for their water. You know throughout history what the Jews used to do for water. Food also could be a problem because now the city was jam-packed with Jews from all over the world. He just blocked the place. For nearly 3.5 months he blocked the place. There were skirmishes, of course. But the food was running out. And add to that, when Titus besieged Jerusalem, there were these zealots, they are freedom fighters, you can call them. Zealots, we call them. And there were various factions of zealots. There was one John of Gischala. He was a very violent man, a murderous fellow. He is one of the faction leaders of the zealots. And there was Eleazar bin Simon, another leader of another faction of the zealots. And there was another one called Simon Bar Giora, John of Gischala, murdered the Eleazar ben Simon. And they had so many differences. Jews throughout history were never united. They have learnt a lesson today, now, and they want to be united. I hope they will always stay united. So they were killing each other like this. Now it is very amazing to know, and we know this from Josephus' book of War of the Jews, in which he writes that they destroyed most of their food supplies. Why? Because they said if we destroy the food and we reduce the amount of food that we have, God, who is our God, will help us to win the war quickly. And in any case, if there's less food, then our people will fight better. Because they know that it's a do or die situation. So they burnt up half the food. And imagine with Jerusalem bursting at its seam with all the people. It was terrible. In 3.5 months, the condition of Jerusalem was so bad. There was no food. Water was a problem. And add to that, the Romans were not willing to budge from outside. And their people were getting killed by the day. There was no food. The old people started dying first. They didn't know, people didn't have the time nor the energy to bury them. The whole place was stinking. Terrible. And Josephus writes, there was a mother who killed her infant, roasted half his body and ate it, and hid the other half. People were killing their own children. People were killing the weaker among them. It was terrible. And by the third week of August of AD 70, Jerusalem was like a graveyard. And yet, they were willing to fight. They did not want to destroy the temple. They wanted to keep it so that after defeating the Jews, they could have that temple dedicated to Caesar. But one of the soldiers there threw a log of wood of fire into the temple area, and the temple caught fire. And as the Romans broke down their walls and their gates, the weakened Jews still were trying to fight, and they were killed in the millions. More than 1 million Jews died in the siege of Jerusalem. The temple was totally decimated and flattened. The Romans did not allow the Jews to come back into Jerusalem, nor to Judea. They completely eliminated the Jews. The Jews ran to all other parts of the world. And no wonder the diasporic Jews today live around the whole world. Their intelligence and their enterprise helped the countries to which they went. So where is the temple today? The temple is totally decimated and destroyed. So most of the areas like Egypt and Alexandria and all these places converted to Islam. They attacked the territories and they conquered Jerusalem. Yeah? And then they made, in place of the temple, they built up the Dome of the Rock, a mosque. And later on, they built the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The place of desolation, that is the temple, on that now stand 2 mosques that are there even today. You can see the model. So whatever I showed you was shown from models of the second temple based on reconstruction. If you go to the Holy Land Hotel in Jerusalem, you will see this model. Temple today does not exist. There is no temple for the Jews. And throughout history, until 1948, they had problems even visiting the temple ruins. But when they allowed them to come once in a year to Jerusalem, they used to stand by the Western Wall, which had not been destroyed, and they used to wail over there. That's why it's called the Wailing Wall. They used to cry, remembering the anniversary of the destruction of the temple, and weep over the ruins of the Holy Temple. So Jews were again not allowed to visit the wall from 1948 to 1967, because the British, when they gave the territories, they did not give this territory to the Israelis. It was in the Jordanian section of the city. But after the Six-Day War of 1967, the Western Wall became a place for national rejoicing and prayer as the last accessible relic of the last temple. So still the Jews have no temple. This is the story of the temple that I told you. It will come in handy when we read the Gospels. It will bring to life the scenes that happened when Jesus was alive. Thank you very much. God bless. Praise God.